Yo, 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 everyone. Right, I'm testing out some new stuff today. So I've got this thing, which I'm still getting used to. Which hopefully means I don't have to worry about having a mic right by my face because it's actually strapped to my face. But yeah, quick one just to say welcome to the weekly Q&A for Mr. Big Mouth Scratch Academy. I haven't done this for a few weeks because it's been over the summer and it's been crazy with the kids and all that sort of stuff. So it's really good to be back and doing this. What I invite people to do is come on, ask any questions that you've got. My chat thing is there. Haha, nice one, Lenny. I can see it over there. Thanks about my face, mate. That's great. Yeah, look, this thing is wicked. I quite like it, and I'm hoping you can hear me really nice and clearly. It's not distorting, so do shout at me if it's not working properly. But this one, so a few weeks back, somebody asked me specifically about scratch transitions. You know, like the practical use of scratching in a kind of DJ set. So I'm going to run through a few things you can do to transition across. So I'll do a little bit on that. And then the other thing is, of course, I've kicked off the hashtag Speed Scratch Challenge. And I've spent a bit of time on that this week, as you can probably imagine. And I've made a ton of progress. So I'm actually going to talk through exactly what I've been doing that's given me that progress, so that you're really clear on what that is and can kind of put that into practice yourselves. So I'm just going to quickly warm up, have a couple of little cuts for a minute. Alright, cool. I feel like we're in. Who else we got on there? Hearing you fine. You look like Madonna with a beard. Yes, mate. I like it. I like it. Yes, Bubba King. How's it going as well, man? Thanks for joining in the party. Right, the first thing that I'm going to talk about is going to be scratch transitions. So, the first one of these that I think is worth noting is you've got a few different ways of doing this, right? So, and none of this is like right or wrong, okay? These are ideas to help you guys kind of think about ways in which you could use scratching in transitions. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is scratch transitions that happen on the one. So they are on the kick of a track. Let me pull a track up. Let's use some classics. I'm probably going to wig out the the copyright on all of this. But so essentially, you got a track playing like this. And what you're going to do is you're effectively going to use your scratching to replace a drum fill. So at the end of this, you'll hear the drums pull out. Here comes the end of the phrase. Right? And there, I'm going to basically replace the drum fill by doing some cuts. Now, for this, because it's talking about jumping, I'm going to use jump around. Right? And if you listen to that, I've got about that much space, right? So it's a kick drum. It's not too exciting. You can do some crabs and some flare type moves on it, but generally speaking, like using the kick to do a transition, I would probably keep it quite simple to things like chirps, so, or babies, and like the odd stab, right, to get kind of introduce that sound, and the odd scribble, right? Because if you just keep that simple, then you can kind of jam to the rhythm, whereas when you start doing all the kind of, it can just get a little bit too messy. Now, with this example, all right, let's just do it. What you'll notice though is, like, when you do the scratch transition, and I've chosen this example like specifically for this, it's not necessarily enough to just drop the track, right? You actually have to do something with this side too. That's normally something like an echo out or a stop button to kind of get that sort of turntable stop effect. Partly because if you listen to this, I'll do it without anything and it will sound crap, right? First time round, let's just do it that way. So, you know, jump up and get it, right? Right, not great, right? It's okay, it's in time, but it's not great, right? What we want to do instead, so here, I'm going to replace the drums. See, so there, I did something really simple. I just basically kicked on the echo. That kept that track kind of going and blending across the drop. So let's do it again, but let's do it with a different approach. Let's do it with just a turntable stop. So it can be quite nice. Now, this particular example, right? Because I've got this kind of thing that's talking about jumping, it might be quite helpful to actually keep, you know, that's about jump around, that's talking about jumping constantly. It might be quite nice to keep that vocal. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to loop that section round, and I'm going to make use of the stems feature to basically knock all of the music out and leave me with just the vocal. So as it's going, now I'm going to do, when I get to the end of this phrase, I'm going to replace the drums by doing a few simple cuts on here, and I'm going to make sure that I cut. So here we go. So I've still got that track going to introduce this one. Right, and so in that scenario, right, I've done, it's all on the one, right? I'm using the kick drum, right? Just a mixture of scribbles and kind of chirps, right? And then I'm landing on the one, and I'm using either an effect or a stop button, or I'm letting it loop back round with the vocal on stems to try and kind of blend over and smooth over that transition. Because on its own, it doesn't. There are examples where it does work, but it doesn't work on its own in every case, whereas you can actually do that with most music that's in time. The second thing that you might want to do, so another example, let's get this playing. Where's this? Yeah, so I've got another example. So instead of going on the 1, you could go to the 4 just beforehand. Right, so that's, who's on here now? Yeah. So that's where it would be the snare just before. So on this track here, right, I've got like a clap, right, before it drops. Let's put that up to a decent speed and slow that one down. Right, and in this example, it's the same kind of concept, right? But the difference is because I'm using a clap, there's a little bit of extra kind of decay on a clap. They tend to be a little bit longer, or a big snare in a hip hop track. This one's still quite short, so I'd probably keep that to things like scribbles and whatever. But if you've got like a longer snare, like a kind of snare, then what you can do is you can start to incorporate some of those kind of crabs and things. It's not so great on that one, but effectively all you're doing is the same kind of concept. So if you've got a track playing, let's take the vocal out of this for ease. See, it's just on that bit there. So what you have to get used to is you just have to get used to when that lands, when that snare lands. Now, one of the things I quite like to do with this is, because ultimately you're mixing, right? You can actually do a forward scratch just to introduce the snare. Right, and then it swaps over. Now, when it's with the snare, you can do a straight swap. Boom, straight across, as long as you drop that on the snare. But equally, you might also want to do a similar thing to what we did before, right? You might want to use echoes, or you might want to continue the vocal over, or you might want to, use a turntable stop or something like that. I think with this example, now, because I'm on Technics, I can't do the speeds properly on this, but we can probably still show it. If I go back to kind of here. See what I've done there? Right, I've basically, same thing as before, right? But I've landed it on that one beat before, so it's like that, and then I've done the same sorts of transitions there. I've basically cut the vocal using, cut the instrumental using stems, and let that carry on. But of course, you can straight drop this one an awful lot easier. So let's just do that again as an example. See, they drop quite nicely, right? And actually, they're not in time, so it can be a nice way to kind of shift your timings around as well. The snare, you tend to get away with a lot more on the snare than you necessarily do on the one. The one can sound a little bit messy, whereas because you've kind of got this track in on the snare, it sounds really natural when it lands, so long as you've got rid of that one. So that's the second type of thing that you can do. Now, with both of those, so one thing to bear in mind, what you're replacing in that scenario is the drums, and your, if you think about like the way a drum beat works, like let's listen to this song again, right? So, boom, 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 boom. Right, it's quite straightforward. And then as it gets towards the end of a phrase, oh, that was a bad example, but know your tracks, right? But basically, what typically happens is you get a build-up of fills, right? And that's where you get a build-up of sound, and that build-up, so you'll tend to get more hits. So boom, boom, boom. Boom, 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 right? And those build-ups, they're getting hit at kind of 16th notes, on 8th notes, everything, all the bits in between. And so that's kind of what you want to replicate. So when you're coming back to your kind of clap, and you're coming to the end, say the beat's kind of going boom, 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 right? And that's what you're kind of emulating. So you've got to think about whether or not the drums are in your drop or not. Because if there's already drums in there and you sort of scratch over it, it can sound messy. So it's better to kind of do them at a point where the drums pull out so that you're not doubling up. Or if there are drums, what you want to do is you kind of want to scratch on the kind of offbeats so that you're effectively adding another drum sample into the drum fill that's going on. But you should think about it like a fill. Don't think about it like a scratch, if that makes sense. It's not about kind of doing your kind of clever rhythmic. That stuff won't work. You want to kind of bounce with the groove of it. See that kind of starting to make my sounds a bit more like a fill, right? Than me just kind of cutting. Right, cool. I think that's enough on that. Any questions on it? There hasn't been anything on the screen, so that's all good. Right, next thing. And I am going to do a proper version of this and add it to the course because I do think it's an important question. But another alternative, so let's just loop this. I think it's probably the sensible thing to do. Right, very basic kind of drum beat here. Get them in time. Nobody kill me for not beat mixing, yeah? Right, so here I've got a drum fill that lasts exactly a bar, right? So it goes 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it drops, okay? So in this instance, I'm going to be thinking about the scratch in terms of bars, right? And you don't want to just straight drop that like I did, right? You probably want to introduce it, right? Because if you listen to it, it's got that kind of sample, that stab, which is quite nice to do all kinds of stuff on. You can crab with that, you can flare with it, right? You can do any type of scratch with it. But you probably want to start introducing that earlier so that the audience doesn't see it as this total surprise. So you get something that's a bit more like this. Right? And that makes that transition work really well, because what you're doing is you're using the scratches initially to kind of introduce the new sound, get the audience used to a new sound that's coming in, and then you're kind of dropping it at the right moment in time, which is there. So I had, you know, a bar of scratching, a bar of scratching, a bar of scratching, and then a drop of the bar, which was basically the entire fill, to then drop into that next track. And what I did there was I jumped straight across, because in that instance you can. The audience knows the switch is coming, they can feel it coming because there's new sounds being introduced, but they're being introduced in a more gentle way, and then bang, it moves across and you can kind of escape from it, right? Now, in a similar vein, that's obviously still using drums or like percussive sounds as your kind of basis for moving across. The next example is where you use like a vocal, and lots of vocals that introduce a track are a bar long, or they might be on the kind of the last 2 beats or the last beat. This particular example, again, let's do a loop. The example I'm going to do here, you'll recognise it in just a second. Let me get it in time. Right. Okay, so California Love is done as a as a set of 4, right? And again, you know, you can just drop that because it's so big. But seeing as this is about scratch transitions, I would probably recommend doing a similar thing to what we did before. So you have some cuts of it first of all, for 3 sets of 4, so 3 bars, and then you drop it on the last one. And with a vocal one, you probably want to keep the original in. You don't want to go straight across because it won't sound too messy because you're doing it over something that doesn't have, like, there's no drums in that section, so it doesn't clash in a bad way. So let's get an example going. Right, do you see how I had them playing over the top of each other for a moment there? And actually what I did was, because this has that hit just before, I actually hit the stop button on this just beforehand, so that you got kind of a turntable stop effect plus that, and that leads into the track really nicely. And so they drop really, really clearly. Now, with that, I always think it's good to do some scratching beforehand, because it's just nice to introduce the audience to this thing. And someone in there's twigging, right? Like a track that big, you don't have to hear much of it to be like, I think I know what that is. And that gives you that kind of opportunity to then, you know, go in. Right? So that's those. Now there are other things you can do. Like if I go back to this one, right, where it drops after that, and it's a set of 4. You could do other clever things. So you could go, right, something like that. So if you wanted to drop way before that kind of last bar, so if you were doing some cuts beforehand, and then you wanted to drop really early, do that. Or you could also do things like tap pauses in there. Right, so you can change the timing by doing all of those things, but I think that's a session for a very specific track. So look, that covers the kind of a few different scratch transitions to get you going. Just a quick recap, that's on the 1, you're often using a kick. Kicks, they can be longer in hip hop, but they tend to be quite short. They tend to respond well to things like scribbles, chirps, forward scratches, as opposed to things like crabs and all that kind of stuff. That's on the 1. You've got the kind of 4, the beat just before the 1. There's usually a snare. That one you can be a bit more creative on, because the snares are normally longer, or a clap is normally a little bit longer, so you've got a little bit more to work with. But either way, you need to think about the scratching that you do in terms of as a drum fill in the track. So obviously, if the drums cut out, that's perfect, because you can kind of do what you like. But if the drums don't cut out, how can you introduce those samples in a way that makes it sound like it's part of the drum fill? You know, don't overcomplicate it effectively. Otherwise, it will just sound a bit crap, or it will sound too busy. There is a place for that sometimes, but my recommendation is you don't. The next one was using an entire bar beforehand, and that you can kind of cut across into, but it's good if you've got a sample that hits at the beginning of that to basically cut that up so that people get introduced to the sound, and then exactly the same concept but with vocal. Right, so let's talk about speed. I've been doing this speed training, and it's gone quite well, if I'm honest. I thought it would take me a lot longer to go as far as I have. Now, I have learned some things, so I'm going to share those. So I started off at the kind of... So for anyone who's watching this who doesn't know what I'm talking about, basically, I've been watching what people are doing in battles, and who the winners are. I was at the Paul Tablis Lounge, and it's kind of similar at the DMC as well. There's lots of people doing very fast 3-click flare stuff or variations of it. So the 3-click flare is where you're pushing the record forward. You're basically closing the fader, tapping it twice, and then opening the fader. Right, and there are variations of that, like the slow Autobahn. and the swing flare. Right, and people are doing that at like crazy speeds, and I was like, you know what? You can moan all day about speed versus musicality and all that kind of stuff, but in a battle, speed is a power move, and you can't really bash any of it unless you can do it, right? And I was like, right, I'm going to level up here. But the thing was having those conversations about how people practice. I just quickly discovered that the people who are doing it at that speed are practicing 5 hours a day, right? Which is impossible for me, probably impossible for all the people watching this. But I actually don't think that's really that helpful, and I wanted to prove it. So I think as long as you do somewhere between half an hour and 60 minutes a day, that will get you as far as you need to go. Now, I had started on about 126 BPM, which is about this speed. Oh. Right. Now, what I've actually been doing, so the first thing is, and I haven't warmed up here, so this is going to help me, but the first thing I've been doing is I get the speed trainer from my course. Now, you can go to courses.mrbigmouthbeats.com, and I have made this material available. So there are 2 modules and the training tools modules that are worth looking at. One's called Deliberate Practice Through the Stages of Learning, and that's in the introduction. The training tools is in the introduction, and then if you click further down to the advanced section, there's advanced speed tricks and training. So have a little look at those. They've been made available to all of the public. You don't have to be a subscriber to view those. The thing about them is, so there are a few different tricks, and basically what I've done is I've embedded all of those tricks into this particular practice regime, and it goes like this. So I start with the speed trainer, which is a 4-minute track that basically starts at 80 BPM and gradually speeds up to 180 BPM. And I use this to warm up. So I set it to 0 on there, and effectively what I do is, because when you get to high speeds, you rely so much on your muscle memory to actually make the clicks happen. It stops being a conscious thing because you just can't think about it too much. You're just kind of listening to see whether you manage to make it happen. And so doing this exercise first is the thing that gets the muscle memory going. So I'm going to start and show you what that is. Right. Right, I've just swapped across to doing slow autobahns. Right, and then back to swing flares. We're about 95 BPM now. Maybe just top in 100. Right, and these are all nice and clear and crispy, right, as I get kind of back into the flow of it. And remember, I'm aiming to get to 160. I'm now about 120. Right, and I'll swap around. And the point of this is not to be super tight, but it's just to get myself kind of warmed up. We're at 133 now. Some of those are 3 clicks, right? Some of them are 2 clicks, but Right, and as I start to struggle, I'll then rewind back to a slightly slower thing. And the point of this, I'll do this 3 or 4 times, right? And the point is just to warm my hands up and remind myself of the muscle memory. And the reason you do that is, like I said, because when we get to doing high speed, I'm not relying on actually doing anything. I'm hoping that my muscle memory is going to deliver the speed that I need it to. So this is just giving it every chance of doing that. One thing I would say as well is, I'm not going to bore you with doing loads of that, but it is important though, and I might struggle a little bit because I haven't done it fully, right? But but the thing that I would say is, don't just try and do it continuously. If you start to find that your hands are getting tired, switch to some other scratches just to give your hands a little bit of a break, and then go back into it. There's no point hurting yourself. And I think I have tired myself out this week doing this. So you know, do be careful. Do listen to yourself. You're going to get sore arms doing this, right? Once I've done that, I then move on to, now, you know I've been able to move from 126 BPM up to about 140 comfortably. I can do 145 at a push. And my kind of 1 rep max, if you like, in the gym is now at 150, which is a remarkable jump from 126. But what I've noticed is that you do have to split these things out. There is a difference between what you can do very, very quickly as a one-off versus, it's the difference between, you can sprint very fast for 10 meters, but can you do it for 1,000 meters, right? Like, no, you can't, obviously. But the thing that I have noticed is that if you're able to increase your top speed at the top end, the consistent stuff tends to catch up with it. Now, there's a big lag, but it does catch up with it. So what I suggest you do after that is, I know I'm at about 140. So I'll put the track on that's at 140. You can get one in the training tools. This is the one here. This is at 140. And what I'll do is, I'll scratch at this speed, but I will do other scratches and then do the scratch that I'm intending to do. So either the 3-click flare or swing flares, and then go back into other scratches. So I flop between doing different ones. So it'd be something like this. Right, these are not the target scratch. See, I started doing some there. So you're listening out for these ones. Right, and these ones. Right, but can you see I've managed to get those at that speed, so I'm at kind of 140. Right, and what I'll do is I'll do this for about 2 or 3 minutes, right? Go through the track, just doing that, swapping between doing some chirp stuff at that speed and then doing the target ones. Right, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to speed it up by about 2.5. Right, so now I'm at 142.5, and then I repeat the process. Right, now if you do that for like 2 or 3 minutes, you will start to get them tighter and tighter at that speed. And I'm messing them up a little bit there. They're not too bad, but they're not perfect by any stretch. Now, the common thing is that people will, at that point, go, oh, I'm not doing them right, and they'll move backwards. And I'm going to tell you to do the exact opposite to that. So after doing that for a few minutes, and, you know, getting kind of close but not quite nailing it, I'm then going to speed it up even further. So now we're at 147. I normally go up in 2.5s, but for the speed of this, let's do it like this. Okay, and what's interesting about that is, you know, I'm actually not that much less tight at them, right? Like, there were still ones that I missed a click here and there, but, you know, it's getting better. So keep going, right? We're now at the top end of what I can do, right? And I will mess a lot of this up, but just for showing you it. These are just to warm me into the speed, right? These aren't the right scratches. Now we're going to start doing the right ones. Okay, now the reason I've been doing this, and actually I'd probably continue there, I'd go a little bit further and a little bit further until I really just cannot do them, and it's extremely stressful, right? And the reason is this, right? Speed is actually about relaxation, and it's about 90% technique, right? It's about muscle memory, and it's about just kind of getting used to twitches. It's about making the movement that you do on this hand really small and getting used to that. And you see, the thing about constantly pushing it faster is that you'll find that you tense up loads. You get really tense, and that tenseness actually slows you down. But the reason you can continue to go faster and faster and faster is because then what happens is when you pull this back down to say 140, I'm suddenly an awful lot tighter because it feels really slow. See that? Now, when we started this, right? When we started this, I wasn't getting them that tight. They're still not super tight, but like I wasn't getting them that tight just, what was it, 10 minutes ago when we started this, right? And so what you need to do, right? Warm yourself up using the speed trainer. Get to the speed that you're at, you know, where you're kind of trying to drive things forward. Spend 2 minutes at that speed, speed it up by 2.5 BPM. Just 2 minutes at that speed, speed it up by 2.5, and keep speeding it up until you are just totally off it, right? And what you want to get to is you want to get to the point where it's like, it sounds terrible, right? You're totally out of time. Your arm hurts, right? But still go at it for like, you know, a minute and a half, right? Don't injure yourself, but like go for it. Because then when you turn it down, you slow it down, you'll relax. And you'll find that because you've been trying it and you've got the muscle memory from doing the earlier stuff, you know, the kind of slowly speeding it up, when you slow it down, the relaxation gives you everything you need to be able to tap on it. Now, I'll be reporting on my progress on Wednesday or Tuesday this week with a proper video. But the thing I'd say about it is there are going to be a few things that I'm going to report on. I'm going to report on the kind of 1 rep max, like what's the absolute fastest I can do. which I'm hoping, and it's just a 1 rep thing. So that's not even going like forwards and backwards. That's just literally going forwards. Right? It's just that. Right? It's not even a. It's not that. Right? It's just half of it. Right? I think that's going to be at the target speed already. Right? It's going to take me weeks to get the rest up, right? And I think progress is always going to be faster at the beginning because you're like focused on it and you're doing all of that. Over time, your limits, the limitations of what your body can do and all that will start to play in, and it will become harder. But I'm going to report on what that 1 rep is. I'm going to report on what's a kind of comfortable usage, which is what I've been doing, which is where you're interspersing it with other techniques, but you're making kind of good use of it like you would in a scratch, but you're only really doing like a forward and a backward as part of like, something. So it's either, the full kind of slow autobahn motion, which is effectively 2 cycles, right? But like that's kind of perfect for when you're cutting, right? Right? You see, I'm just kind of using it practically there. So that's the second stage. And then the third stage is going to be what BPM have I got to where I can literally just do it in a continuous fashion. Probably slower than this. It's probably like 135 or something at the moment. So this is, let's say 133, right? So can I do it in a continuous motion for a decent amount of time? Let's test it out. Just getting used to the speed. Right, here we go. See, that's still a little bit too fast for me. I think that's pretty reasonable, actually. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And I think, if you take that process and you do that 30 minutes a day, man. No, don't kill yourself. Right? Most of the magic happens overnight when you're sleeping and all that kind of muscle memory is going in. Your brain consolidates information. It takes in tons of information in a day. It's crazy. It's something ludicrous, like 60 million pieces of information come in. And the process of sleep is designed and serves the purpose of the brain kind of going, that was nonsense, that was nonsense, that was something I need to care about and a connection I need to build. And then it uses all the kind of protein synthesis and stuff that, is associated with recovery to basically solidify that neural pathway that enables you to do things. So actually practicing 5 hours a day, don't get me wrong, if you practice in a way and you have breaks and all that stuff, I mean, it's great. If you can get that, then fantastic. But if you just want to really improve your speed, I think you can do it with 30 to 60 minutes maximum and just make sure that you get the rest in between. Do make sure you have some fun as well, yeah, because it's a bit dry. This week's been a bit dry on the decks. But anyway, if you want to join in and you want to see how far you can push this stuff, right, then please get involved. Post some videos, use the hashtag, tag me and use the hashtag Speed Scratch Challenge, because I'd love to see how other people are getting on. I've seen there's some stuff in the chat here. Muscle memory is what I'm struggling with my mind, can't keep it with my hand when trying. They'll have to try this, yeah. Yeah. Can I do it on both sides? Great question. No, is the answer. So I can do quite a lot of stuff on that side. Unfortunately, the camera is not probably set up for me to. No, it's not. It's all on one-sided. But I can cut on this hand. Right, there are things I can do, but I'm not speed training that side yet. I intend to do it once I've got this one up to speed. One of the things that I stand by, and I don't actually mention this in the course, but I do believe this. You do need to train both hands, but master techniques on one hand first and then do it on the other side. So your brain will have a much easier time replicating from one side to the other than it will learning both at the same time. So I would always go, right, if I'm learning the 3-click flare, you need to get to that level of proficiency before then moving over and trying it on the other side. I don't even think I could do that. Yeah, I haven't done the 3 clicks yet, but I'm still on 2 clicks on that side. But that would be my recommendation. The muscle memory thing is a pain in the arse. It takes time. The best thing I can tell you about muscle memory is go slow. Go really slow and focus on accurate and correct at first. There's no point speed training until you have the muscle memory. It's literally a waste of your time. You need to be confident in the technique you're doing. Now, if you want to take part and you can't do the 3-click flare, by all means do the chirp or do whatever technique it is you want to get fast at, stabs, right? It doesn't matter. The same process will work for any technique, right? But in my course, I teach that you need to follow technique, timing, speed. It's in that order, so you start by no music, you get the technique. Really slow, and then gradually, once you're comfortable with it, you start introducing music, and then you're focusing on timing, you're not focusing on speed. So, if it's the 3-click flare, you're just focusing on getting that in time to a slow beat. So like this. Right? And then once you've got that timing right, that's when you can start thinking about speed. But there might be lots of different timings that you want to try out, so the 3-click flare is a bad example of this, but the 2-click flare, for example, right? That's the standard, right? That's the standard kind of rhythm that you'd follow, but you could do it as... Oh. Oh, that was terribly done. But anyway, the point is don't focus on speed until you've mastered the kind of the muscle memory bit and then getting it into the right timing that you want to increase the speed of. Because if you try and bite off more than you can chew, you just won't get that. Like your brain, it's all about managing your cognitive load. I think we often think that we're capable of more from that perspective. You actually can't really, and there's some great neuroscientists out there. There's a guy who runs the Neuro Leadership Institute. He's got lots of TED Talks. He's worth having a little look at. He's like, literally, you can't focus on more than one thing at a time. Like, you think you can, but you end up doing all of those things badly, or slowly, or ineffectively, right? So always when you're trying to do something, separate it down to the smallest part that you can and focus on that one thing at a time. So get your muscle memory right first, right? Then can I do it to a beat in standard timing? Then can I do it to that same slow beat in an alternative timing if that's relevant? Then let's speed it up, right? And that way you're just focusing on one manageable thing at a time. Right, folks, that's me for today. I'm just going to do some cuts to end off because I feel like doing some cuts. But yeah, if you want to join in with the speed challenge, the speed scratch challenge, use that hashtag speed scratch challenge, post some videos, tag me, let me know what your progress is, let me know what you're struggling with, because I'd really love to see a load of people just smashing crazy, like whatever it is, 3-click flares if that's what you're doing. but getting that speed thing that they want to achieve, not because it's then everything, but because then it just gives you more musical possibilities. Right, thanks folks. Let's cut.